Hello and welcome everyone. It is Tuesday at noon and you know what that means. We are here live and we are excited to be here today. It is February 1st, 2022, and this is also the start of Black History Month here in the United States and in other countries around the world. And I wanted to make sure that throughout different months and times of celebration and memoriam and honoring um, different areas of our population and of the people within our world, that we take time at the table to also celebrate those moments in time and those people who have gone before us to help us build our country and our world. Black History Month is the annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Also known as African American History Month, this event grew out of Negro History Week, which was the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. And you might wonder why, and we'll talk about that next week. Other countries around the world, including Canada and the United Kingdom, also devote a month to celebrating Black history. This year for 2022, Black History Month has a theme of Black health and wellness, with a special emphasis on healthcare access and improving wellness for Black Americans. And I think it's really important that we understand the history of some of the things we celebrate and the importance of these celebrations to not only the people who we are celebrating and honoring, but to all of us. And so each week this month, I will be featuring an amazing Black voice, professional, maybe American, maybe not, irrelevant to me, really, so that I feel like we can support and do our part in helping to amplify the voices that everyone needs to hear. And it's not something we just do during February, but I wanted to place special emphasis on it this month in honor of this particular event. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest today. Our guest is Julie Turney. Julie and I do a lot of the same work. We are both coaches in the HR space. Julie has been in the HR field for many years, and she has written a phenomenal book called Confessions of an HR Pro. And if you haven't purchased this yet or heard about it or read it, I encourage you to do so. Julie and I are going to talk about all of the stories she's gathered, her own experience, and some tips and insights that might help you as an HR professional to manage through the anxiety, the pressure, and the chaos of the work you may do each and every day. So with that, I am excited and thrilled to invite Julie to the table to claim her seat and join us today.
Hi, Barbie. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to have you here. I know we connected a year or so ago
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, and we tend to have a very similar perspective in the way we approach the work we do. And I absolutely love how much support you provide to the HR community, because we know they're the unsung heroes in a lot of workplaces, and the work we do is heavy. It's not easy work, right? And not to
Exactly.
diminish the work of other departments, but our work tends to be significantly heavier emotionally than
Mm-hmm.
other branches of an organization.
Yeah.
So I would first, again, want to show everybody this amazing book that
Ah,
Julie's written, and encourage you all to take a look at it. But I want to start off with first asking you, what inspired you to write Confessions of an HR Pro? And once you got that inspiration, what was your process?
oh, thank you for asking that. I was inspired to write the book mainly out of my own frustrations with being in the HR space.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of times as HR, we read a lot of textbooks. Almost seems like every book is focused on what HR should do and how HR should do it. But looking for that space where we actually can start to have safe conversations about what we are actually going through as HR professionals in our day-to-day jobs. I wasn't seeing a lot of that. And so I felt like, you know what? Maybe you should write a book about it since you're not seeing it. Being in that year of yes, which started in September 2019, that's how this book was born. Through my year of yes, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you're not seeing it, tell the story. But it's not just my story to tell. And so starting the process was having those conversations with fellow HR professionals who I admire and respect and saying, this is what I'm thinking. Do you think it's a good idea? And if it's a good idea, would you be willing to share your story in the book? And everyone said, yes, absolutely. We will do that. And so I have 10 amazing co-authors who join me on this journey of telling their stories, of their stories of defeat and triumph in the HR space, but then also sharing like lessons learned, because I thought that that was really important. It's that book that for me is like, where is the HR for HR? The question I asked most of my career, like, where is the HR for HR? And it's the book I wish I had at the start of my career, but it's the book that I'm also glad that I have now that I can go back and take a look at. And that kind of started the journey of writing the book.
That's so great. And I love the second half of the statement. It's the triumph piece, right? Because we all go through the challenges. We all worry and have the heaviness at times of the well-being of our employees and the well-being of the company, which the company is a legal entity. It's made up of people, so it can be really difficult at times. But you've taken it one more step beyond just the confessions of or the stories of, but to the triumph and the resilience. And I think that's something that a lot of folks need to hear, is that HR people are incredibly resilient.
Absolutely.
We've seen this more than any time in history, right? In the past 2 years of how crazy the ebb and flow has been with trying to manage COVID and keep people safe and become the strategic voice and vision of how we maneuver our people through this completely unknown territory. And yet we're still here, and we're still trying to be the support system we can be for everyone else. But at times that means we forget to take care of ourselves. And so in order to get to that triumph and that resilience, we do have to do that, right? We're not just an endless well of positivity all the time. We have to care for ourselves. So as you were gathering those 10 stories, again, I'm showing the book, guys. You got to order the book. Was there a theme that you started to identify as you were gathering these stories? Was there anything in particular that really jumped out at you that, like, wow, this is not just me feeling this. This is something that all of these people have shared, or maybe there's more than one theme that jumped out at you?
Oh, lots of things jumped out at me when I started to write this book. Is that, number one, people are willing to talk about their story if you ask. Number two, there is power in community. And I was surprised to find so many HR people who are a department of one, feeling alone, having no community. And then the most important thing would be, we suck at taking care of ourselves. Like,
it's true.
We really just are not taking the best care that we could possibly take of ourselves at all. And the theme just came through all the time, that our mental health and well-being is something that we constantly struggle with as HR professionals. It's something we don't talk about because we don't have the safe spaces to do it in. If we are if we are only a department of one, if we're the only HR person in the organization, if we're the only person of color in the organization in HR, there's so many different facets to this that just really helped me to appreciate that I'm glad that I didn't take for granted that the privileges that I had,
Yeah.
finding my community, finding my voice, that everyone else in HR has done that and feels safe to do that. And being able to share these experiences in the book is something that really, I am so honored to have had that opportunity to do it.
I love that. And I first, before we move forward, I love everyone who's joined us. Hello, everyone. Hey, Miss Tara and Michelle and Wendy and Cora. So many great folks. Howard out in the audience. So if you guys have questions for Julie or myself, please send them through the questions. We do our best to bring up as many questions and comments as we can to make this as interactive as possible. Hey, Angela, so good to see you. Oh my gosh, it's been way too long since I've seen your face. So thank you, everybody. Something you said right off the bat just jumped out at me, and I actually wrote it down, and I think this is so important for us to remember. People are willing to talk if you ask them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not only a theme for HR professionals, right? Because we know we need to be heard, but when we're not asked, we keep it to ourselves often.
Yep.
But it's also something as an HR professional to keep in mind when you're supporting the people of your organization. Oftentimes, they don't share their stories with you because they're afraid, right? HR doesn't always have the best reputation in the world for being a safe space, even though I know there's 90% of the people who work in our field have the right intentions and do everything they can do each and every day to create safe spaces for people.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's the 10% that end up getting all of the notoriety and creating that fear culture. So we have to take steps to dispel that fear culture by creating safe spaces and asking people to talk with us.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we have to apply that to ourselves, right? So how are you able to do that? How are you able to get folks to just open up to you?
So, because just based on this comment that Angela is making, when we don't do what we preach, right? So, my my theory is, if we practice what we preach, then we'll get what we need. But if we don't practice what we preach, then we need to change our speech.
Oh,
And
I like it.
so practice what you preach or change your speech, right? And if you're saying that you want people to open up, then you have to be willing to do the same. And so one of the things that I learned to appreciate a long time ago came from an experience that Brené Brown gave in an interview that she did with Oprah some time back. And she said, now, not everyone deserves to hear your story, but when you do share it, you need to be making sure that you're totally focused on the fact that the people that you're sharing it with deserve to hear it, deserve to learn from it, and deserve to be able to have that opportunity to move on, right? And so I started having intentional conversations with HR people. I started opening up my calendar, offering one on ones, virtual coffees throughout COVID to any HR pro that just wanted to talk, and having conversations with them about my experiences, but listening to theirs, listening to theirs. And that's the way that I've always practiced my HR. I've always, even though I've sat in an office where the door is closed, I've always made it clear to employees, this is how I work. We are colleagues. We are in this together. My door is always open, even though it may be literally closed. And if you want to talk, I'm here for you. And I've always done that in organizations that I've worked in. And I offered the same courtesy to my HR community. And the stories, the laughs, the tears, the frustrations, the opportunities to learn from, and the opportunities to share have been tremendous as a result of being able to have those opportunities to talk to people and hear their struggles and share mine and learn. It's been a great experience.
That's amazing. It's that vulnerability piece, right? Because
Yeah.
I think what happens is we're so used to taking it in from everyone else that
Mhm.
it, and in to use Brené's words, right? We create an armor because we have to be strong for everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think when you embody that mentality of I have to be strong for everyone else, we can lose our ability to be vulnerable and
Hmm.
to open up to someone. And
Yeah.
so it can take some people time to understand that. But I love what you said is we have to change the way in which we do what we do. If we
Hmm.
want a different outcome and a different result, then we have to do
Yeah.
something different. And it's
Exactly.
interesting. I was coaching a team last week, and we were going through a very detailed exercise, and many of them were not interested in it. Like at first I could just see on their faces they were there because they had to be, and they're thinking about all the other things that they could be doing, and their pings are going off, and their Slack is all the stuff, right?
Hmm.
But as we started to go through it, and I was pulling information out of them, and then started to map things out and look at potential solutions and how things could be different, you could literally see their faces change, their
Yeah.
body language change. They started to lean into the conversation, and their faces would light up, and we were laughing and smiling. But it took time to get them there, and it's so rewarding when you do let go of that, because that's
Yeah.
how you create connection, right? And I think that's what we're
Exactly.
losing, is that connection piece. So
Exactly. And it's
so
not
important.
just having the one conversation, right? But it's continually following through on building relationships. I'm focused on building relationships. I'm focused on building community. That doesn't happen with one conversation. And it doesn't happen by just putting a post on LinkedIn and leaving it there.
Right.
Sometimes when am interacting with people on LinkedIn and we're talking on different topics, I go in people's DMs and I go, I saw your comment. And if you really want to talk, here's some time on my calendar. Let's have that conversation. But then if we've had a conversation a month ago, sometimes I come back in your DM and I'll go, hey, how's it going? Like, I just want to see if you made any progress. Has there been any improvement? Not everyone
Mhm.
can afford the luxury of hiring a coach. I totally get that and I respect that. And that's not my focus. My focus is building community and building friendships, building partnerships,
Mhm.
helping people through the rough and the tough parts of this thing that we come into as a profession called HR. And how do
Mhm.
we, weather the storm when we feel so alone and trapped and frustrated and,
Right.
stressed and isolated? How do we deal with that? And that's what I focus on. If I get a client out of that, then yay, good for me. But if not, at least I've gained a friend, a member of my community that if something happens and I need to refer or I need to call a name, I can speak a name in a room, then I can do that for that person.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so generous of you to just have that intention. Is you're simply putting yourself out there to help others.
Yeah,
And the money follows, right? The business part of it
absolutely.
follows, which
Hmm.
I love. I think that's so important that we have the right intention with anything we go into.
Yeah, I mean, we know it for ourselves, Barbie, right? We've experienced it when people drop into your inbox. I would say predominantly on LinkedIn because that's where I live. I live on
Right.
LinkedIn and my message box is always full of something.
Yep.
There's nothing more annoying than someone reaching out to me because they've looked at my profile and they think I might need their services. Like, for the beginning of this year, like if I could tell you, maybe like 20% of my inbox has been full of people going, do you need a virtual assistant? No, I don't. I have a great
Oh
virtual assistant. She's fine. But you get those cold messages, or
yeah.
people saying, let me help you increase this or increase that. And I'm like, I'm fine with building my community organically because I'm being intentional about it. So just
Yeah.
leave me alone,
Yeah.
right? But when I say all of that to say this is how I build my community, and I'm fiercely protective of my community, and I'm very intentional about it. And I have more joy in giving than I do when I get stuff, I'm like, yay, I'm happy about it. Of course, it keeps the roof over my head, it feeds my family,
Right.
but I'm more happy when I'm able to give advice, time, attention, research stuff, and share it with people. That's what makes me happy about being in the HR space.
Well, you're definitely in the right space for that framework and approach for sure. But I want to circle back because you keep dropping all these little nuggets that I want to make sure we don't miss.
Mhm.
Is that when we're in school, like all these people entering the HR field, right? When you're in school for whatever you might be studying, whether it's HR or not, but when you start your career in HR, you
Yep.
have an idea of what it's going to be.
Mhm.
And you and I and Tara and Angela and lots of people who are watching today can tell all of those newbies that it's likely nothing like you think it's going to be.
And
and
absolutely.
and sometimes that means it's better and more rewarding, and sometimes it means it's not so much.
Yep.
Right? There's a lot more to it than we learn in school or that we believe, because until you're in it, you're on the outside looking in.
That's it.
And you said something that's so important, is it can be so isolating. Unlike the work we do in marketing or sales or even finance to a point, um, or and in operations, the work we do has to be protected. We're talking about people's lives, whether it's their financial well-being, their mental, their physical, their medical information, their feelings, their struggles, all of the things that are shared with us as HR professionals. We have to protect that individual's privacy and dignity. There are legal protections we have to abide by, but there are also just ethical,
Yep.
protections that we commit to having, and so it can be very isolating. And the further up you go on the ladder,
The more
the
you are
more
isolated.
and more isolated you become. Having been in that CHRO seat, in that executive suite for years, I know you're hearing it all, you're taking it all in, but you can't go and talk to anyone about it. Not even your CEO, not even your boss, not even your fellow C-suite folks, because you can't disclose what's happening.
No.
So we often just internalize all of it. And that's what creates such anxiety and mental health concerns for a lot of the HR people who are working today, is
Mhm.
that we've absorbed all of this for so long, and now what do we do with it? So
Yep.
I love that you're creating this community for people to share and to have that outlet of talking about what they're dealing with. Obviously, there's therapists and there's other people who we would
Yeah.
redirect them to as well. That's not who we are.
Right.
But I love that you are offering them whatever capacity you have to support, because it's so helpful. So
Yeah.
helpful.
Thank you. Absolutely. Because as you rightly said, when it comes to, I always encourage therapy. I think therapy and coaching go hand in hand for HR professionals. And having, I have a coach, have two coaches, and I have one therapist who I rely on very heavily, because now I'm in the space of supporting the people who support the people. It means that when they release, I take it. The vicarious trauma that I experience from some of the stories that I hear is very real for me, just as it is for my clients. And so a lot of times I will say, well, I think you need to, I would recommend therapy for this particular reason because I'm not a therapist.
Right.
However, what we can do is create action plans for how you move forward in safeguarding yourself when this particular thing happens in the future, and how we can have courageous conversations either with our leadership or with the employees to ensure that going forward, this is how this particular situation is managed. But I strongly recommend both. And I
Mhm.
strongly recommend, I think when we talk about benefits, right? We create these amazing benefits packages for our employees. Again, when I talk about HR professionals sucking at taking care of ourselves, if you've ever asked like your HR friends, like how many of you actually use the services that you've created for your employees? How many of you actually remember that you are employees too?
Yes.
So therefore you are entitled to these things too. A lot of times when I ask people that question, maybe 3 out of 10 are using those services. But you've got 7 people that aren't using them, or
Mhm.
hundreds of people that aren't using them, never even thought about using those services for themselves. And I always say, look, you were employees too. Those things that you created, you didn't just create them for the employee experience outside of yourself. You are an employee as well, and the employee experience should matter to you because it impacts you as well. So go
Sure.
partake in those services, go to therapy. And I also think that one of the things that I would love to see organizations do for HR when you're recruiting your HR professionals, I encourage leaders to please include coaching for your HR people. Because if your HR person is the only, which most organizations they are, they're going to need an outside voice. They're going to need some external support. And it's not just about joining those big HR organizations that we're all familiar with, but it's about giving them opportunities to create their own safe spaces to get the support that they need. And a classic example of this would be like yesterday, for example, in talking to one of my clients, and she said, she was bouncing some ideas off of me, some of which she had thought through because we've gone through the process of how do we think things through to make decisions. But she wanted to bounce them off of me. And the last thing she said before she closed off the call was, I'm so glad that I have you because outside of you, I'd be lost. I have no one. And she's sitting as a head of HR in a group of companies. And that happens for a lot of HR professionals that I work with who are heads of teams, heads of big organizations, but they're so alone. They have no one.
Yeah, it happens more often than we think, right? So when you think about recommendations for HR professionals with regard to self care, sorry, one of my cats is all of a sudden on my desk, and I'm just waiting for some appearance or something to get knocked over. Um, when we think about what does self care mean to the HR professional, I know for me, when I talk to folks, it's always like it's not a one size fits all. Self care means different things to everyone. And for
Yeah,
me, self care can mean being alone and doing nothing but watching the Golden Girls for 2 hours because that is
yeah,
a stress relief for me.
that is
I
a great
laugh, I
stress
enjoy
relief.
it, and right, I don't have to think about anything. I can just kind of just immerse myself in that moment. But that's not going to work for everybody. So
Yeah,
what are some of the things that you've learned in your journey and in writing your book about self-care tips that other folks might want to adopt into their habits, because it really becomes a habit, right? Just like
habit.
any other habit, it's a habit we have to establish in order to make it meaningful for us.
Absolutely. Self care starts with self, right? So you need to understand yourself, the things that you do that make you happy, and then do those things. So just like you said, watching 2 hours of the Golden Girls is that's it for you. For me, it's watching a Marvel movie. I am a huge Marvel fan. I de-stress watching Marvel movies, believe it or not. But it's finding those things that work for you. Mindfulness. I am a huge advocate of mindfulness. I practice mindfulness every single day, sometimes twice a day. One of the many challenges that we have in this space right now is we have a lot of HR professionals who are struggling with insomnia and anxiety. Mindfulness helps a lot with that. I strongly recommend the Calm app. I swear by the Calm app, but there are lots of other ones out there. There's Headspace, there's Thrive Global. There are lots of different ones, but I recommend the Calm app because they have lots of different things in there that you can use. I love to just go for a walk. Just go get outside, wake up in the morning and kiss the sun, you
Mhm.
know, something like that. If you're working during the course of the day, I strongly recommend taking a break in between calls. Don't have your calendar so blocked. Setting healthy boundaries. If you say you're going to shut off at 5, and someone comes to you and says, can you meet with like 30 minutes? No, I'm going home. Shut off at 5. The other thing that I'm constantly coaching my clients about is when you say you're taking vacation, put on an out of office message and take vacation. Do not log back in to check your emails. Do not, make sure the payroll is all taken care of if you're the only person taking care of the payroll, or if you can hand it over to someone in the accounts department, then, have that conversation with your CFO, but set those healthy boundaries. If you have people who barge into your office or jump into your Slack all the time, then, you need to set boundaries of, making it clear that these are the hours that I work. If you send me a message after 5 o'clock, then I'm going to be spending that time with my family. If you put 911 at the beginning of it, I know it's an emergency and I'll check in and quickly deal with it. But if it doesn't have 911 on it, I'm going to assume that you've sent it because it was something you wanted to send and you didn't want to forget. And therefore, I'll deal with it next business day.
Yep.
This
is so timely. I have a team of folks I coach regularly, and we're talking about boundaries. And one of those is time blocking. And you can't get your work done if you're just in meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and or constantly responding to every email instantaneously or every Slack message that comes in.
Yep.
So this sounds really simple, but we don't do it enough. Literally going into your calendar, blocking time, and setting an out of office message that says, I'm currently working on, a really important project for the organization. My responses might be delayed. Or if you're out of office, you're out of office enjoying your family. But whatever it happens to be, setting that message out there lets people know that, wow, she's taking ownership for her time and it builds respect. It doesn't build criticism. It actually builds respect. Boundaries are one of the healthiest things you can do for yourself.
Exactly.
And HR people suck at boundaries.
Suck at boundaries.
They really do.
At boundaries. I live by my calendar to the point that there are times set in my calendar for me to drink water, go eat food, take a walk. All of those things are in my calendar every single day.
Yep.
I even have an alert in my calendar that says, okay, time for mindfulness, and I go do it. Because you can't create healthy habits if you don't have a strategy in place. If you're just striking your arrows into the air, then they'll go nowhere, right? Except into the air. They may land and hurt people unintentionally. So be intentional about where you strike your arrow. Be intentional about it. But setting those healthy boundaries is important. And again, and I'm sure it happens to you too, a lot of the HR professionals I work with, the first thing they come to me about is, I'm struggling with setting boundaries. People will do to you what you allow them to do.
Yes.
The moment
absolutely.
They can only do what you allow. They can't do stuff that you say no to. They can't do stuff to you that you have set boundaries on. So set healthy boundaries. Have those conversations. A lot of times we complain. I've done it. I've been guilty of it. I see a lot of people do it. We complain a lot about managers, not having respect for this, not having respect for that. But now, because I'm on the other side of it, I ask my clients, okay, so did you have a conversation with your manager about that? No. So why are you telling me? Like, the problem isn't with me. So how do you expect it to change if you're not talking to the person you have the problem with?
Yes, it's so true. And
we don't do that.
No, we don't. And it goes back to, I say this all the time, somewhere along the line, we've confused being a service organization with servitude. And they're very, very different.
Yes.
And we've got to get out of that mentality that we are here to be at everyone's beck and call, because that is not. We are as legitimate a business function as any other function of the business, which means we have a right to claim our time, to own decision making, to protect ourselves, just like everyone else does. Right? We're not the catch-all and we're not the afterthought. We are a business function. And that's a huge part of the coaching that I provide, right? Is I help folks understand how to be a business leader who works in the people space. We've got to get away from, as Tara Furiani says all the time, like the old HR lady mentality, like
Correct.
let that go. That's not serving anyone. It's not helping your employees become better. It's not helping your
No,
organization become better. It's
exactly.
just taking everybody down a notch, and we can do better. I just have to quickly respond to Eric Ullman. Yes, Eric, I did know about the Golden Palace, and you're right. It's so bad. It's good. But I would have taken anything to extend being able to see those folks on TV a little bit longer. But yeah, it's not the best show ever. But that's okay. It still had my favorite characters in it. So, anytime I get to talk about the Golden Girls, it's going to happen. Just so
I
you know.
know.
So, when we talk about boundaries, I do this exercise with a lot of my clients, and I can't remember, Julie, if we were on a webinar together or not when I shared this, but if I'll ask folks, like, what's your favorite fast food or retail establishment? And typically people will say Amazon or Chick-fil-A are always in the top two. So I use Chick-fil-A. Do you have Chick-fil-A in Barbados? I don't know.
No,
Okay.
we don't.
It's okay. Have you ever been to a Chick-fil-A?
I've never been to a Chick-fil-A.
Okay, well, this may not resonate with you, but for those of us in the U.S. who frequent Chick-fil-A, I'll ask these questions. So Chick-fil-A is a chicken fast food restaurant.
Right.
One of the fastest growing fast food chains in the world, consistently rated, excellent service, excellent product.
Yeah.
So I'll ask the team, so can you go to Chick-fil-A and order a pizza? No. Can you order a cheeseburger? No. Can you go on Sunday? No, because all Chick-fil-A's are closed on Sunday. Can you go, and if you work there as an employee, can you wear jeans and a t-shirt? No. Okay, so there's all these things that we say no to. Yet, they're the favorite fast food chain. And why are they your favorite? Because you get consistent product, consistent service, you know what to expect. So we understand boundaries. We just don't call them boundaries. Chick-fil-A has established boundaries. They're never going to be open on Sunday because that's core to their belief system.
Yeah.
They're never going to serve pizza or cheeseburgers because that's outside of their scope of what they provide. And you can't work there unless you follow these guidelines. And when we abide by their boundaries, what do we get? We get the food we want, the service we want, and our expectations are met or exceeded each and every time. So why is it okay for a fast food restaurant or all these other entities out there to establish boundaries in order to provide excellent service and product, but it's not okay for us as HR people? It is okay for us. We just have to understand and shift the way we think about it.
Exactly. I want to excuse me, just touch on these 2 points that I see Eric and Paul making with regards to, just being productive versus busy, right? I think a lot of times as HR, we're busy people, right? We're busy doing what? But are we productive? And I think it's really important to understand from creating those boundaries, focusing on what needs to be done and getting it done in a strategic way is a way of helping us to create healthier ways of working. So we're doing great stuff. Lots of organizations have great HR professionals who are just killing it every single day, but they're killing themselves in the process.
Right.
And that is something that needs to change. The stories of burnout, the stories of heart attacks and near-death experiences that have come to the fore in the last 2 years that I have been engaging in this work with HR professionals is insane. To think that there are so many of us out there, and we've lost so many good people in the last 2 years. To just not feeling safe with themselves, feeling so overwhelmed and feeling like they've failed their organizations and the world is better off without them. And I'm not going to call their names, but a lot of us know who they are, who we've lost in the process of this COVID-19 pandemic and beyond and prior to. And I just think it's really important for us to understand as HR professionals, keep your ego in check. I always remember this saying. I listened to a speech that was given by Dr. Rick Rigsby, who is a chaplain for the NFL. And he made a statement in one of his speeches: ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. I'm going to say it again, just in case you got a family member you want to say it to. Ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. And a lot of times, as HR professionals, we let our ego get in the way of getting the help that we need. We think that we are so on top of our careers. Burnout is never going to happen to us. We'll never have a heart attack. We'll never have a nervous breakdown. But you don't know how many things have happened to you over the years that you've never released. And it only takes one thing to tip you over the edge. When I had my last bout of HR burnout, it was an accumulation of things that was happening in my life and at work. And it was just one thing after that that tipped me over the edge. And I'll tell you what my burnout looked like. I was twitching every day around between from the moment I entered the car park at work till I left and came home 2 hours later. This left eye every day for months. Twitch, 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 twitch. I lost my appetite. I had insomnia. I was hearing voices. Like I would hear like this voice saying to me, like, why are you here? This is not your calling. You shouldn't be here. You need to be somewhere else. And I heard that voice for months. I couldn't stand in lines. Simple things like I couldn't stand in the line to go to the ATM. I couldn't stand at an ATM to cash, to get money out of it because my hands would shake. My entire body was shaking. That's how bad it was. When my mom finally took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, take her to the hospital right now. And we spent hours at the hospital, and they sent me home and they put me on bed rest for 6 weeks. And my mom stayed at my bedside, and if it wasn't for her willing me back to life after that, I don't know where I would be. And I'm saying to you, as HR today, if you are having anything that doesn't feel right, doesn't sit right, any pain, any frustration, any twitching, any voices, anything that's happening to you right now that is saying to you, this is not sustainable, listen to your body, listen to that voice, go do something about it, and then start to take the steps to heal you. Yep, hair falling out.
Oh yeah, I've had that.
Hair falling out, had that for months. And I was bald for 14 years because I had this problem with my hair. And I've been in HR for 16 years.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
It's not easy.
No, and it's the insomnia is legit, right?
Yeah.
Like that is, and when you don't sleep well, nothing else in your life is going to go well because our bodies must have rest. And that's it. I've been a victim of insomnia for a long time. I've gotten it under control, but it took me years to figure that out. And when we think about we live in a culture that actually encourages people to hustle, to push through, just do it, get shit done. All this, like when you think about those quote unquote motivational posters, they're so unhealthy, right? Like no rest and all it, like it's so counterintuitive and so unhealthy for all of us that we have to be, as you said, intentional with the messages we tell ourselves and the messages we tell our teams. And I think oftentimes we're really good at telling our teams to take a break, but we don't do it ourselves, right? We don't do it ourselves for sure.
Absolutely.
And Angela has something here, setting boundaries without feeling guilty.
Yes.
I think that's huge, right? Because we do feel guilty about everything.
Everything.
We've got to let go of that. Like, think about the other folks within your organization, your finance team, your marketing team, your sales team, your operations team. When they leave at 5 o'clock, do they look back and feel guilty? No. Nope, they don't. We can't either. We have to compartmentalize the fact that this is our job. And this is what we get paid to do, but it's not who we are 24/7.
It's not.
We have other things that make up a healthy life, and we have to lean into those things and find that balance. And it's going to look different for everyone. Everybody, it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's hard for some people, right? Because they think, well, it works for her. Why isn't it working for me? Or if it works for him, it won't work for me. So I wanted to ask, we've got so many great comments coming in, so I'm trying to manage keeping those coming. So when you think about the burnout piece, right, and the pain, I read this phenomenal book by twin sisters Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and the book is called Burnout. It's actually right back there on my shelf, the pink one on the end. It's called Burnout. And one of the things that was really like just hit me like a ton of bricks is that we have convinced ourselves that by removing the stressor, that we then remove the stress. And that is not the case. So another thing that we have to think about in this whole self-care journey is that if you're burned out where you are and you're like, I got to leave this environment, I need a less toxic environment. And I encourage you guys to do that for sure, right?
Yeah.
But then you start your new job and all of a sudden you find you're in the same place all over again. What can contribute to that is the fact that we are confusing removing the stressor with dealing with the stress. Dealing with the stress is a very different experience, then yes, you have to remove the stressor or it's going to compound over and over again. But dealing with the stress itself is its own journey. When you think millions of years ago, right, when we were, or thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, when we were cave people and we were running through the forest being chased by a lion or a saber-toothed tiger or whatever it was, and maybe we killed the tiger and we drag it back to the village and everybody in the village celebrates and screams and we dance around the fire and we have this big feast and everything else, right? It's that activity, that physical activity of the dancing, the screaming, the celebration that actually releases the stress of being chased from our bodies. It's not just the fact that the tiger went away. It's everything we do after that allows our bodies to calm back down and allows those cortisol levels to drop back down. But we don't do that. And so when you think about self-care and handling the stressor and the stress, do you have any insights or tips? We know talking to people about it, but are there other things outside of finding that safe space that you would recommend for people to help deal with that physical stress piece?
There are so many healthy ways for you to actually just deal with it, but you have to be in a state of readiness to deal with it. And to your point about, leaving one set of stress and entering another organization, and sometimes what ends up happening is you end up either waiting for the other shoe to drop in that organization because you feel, oh my gosh, this just seems too good to be true, that I'm actually working in an organization that deserves me and that I deserve to be a part of, and that what I'm experiencing is just the honeymoon phase and it's going to get worse. We have to start unlearning and conditioning our minds to being able to accept what a moment is in the moment that we're experiencing it. And we have to learn not to carry those things over. And so sometimes just writing a list for yourself. I give my clients a fear list. And it's tell me the things that you're afraid of happening in this new situation. And tell me the things that you're afraid of right now in this moment. Are they tied to this new organization or are they tied to your previous organization? And let's start to deconstruct that. Now, a lot of times I give people the exercise of a forgiveness ceremony, and that's just taking the opportunity to recognize that when you're leaving another organization, what brought you to the point that you felt that you needed to leave, while you may feel a measure of guilt that you were not able to be successful in that role, in that organization, for whatever reason, you have to forgive yourself. And so I always encourage people to, before you start a new role, don't just go from one job to the next. Take a day or two, take a week or two or more if you can. Make those conversations happen with the person that you're moving on to, where you actually negotiate that time. Say, like, you need it, a bandwidth of time for you to let go of the past so that you can enter the new with some form of clarity and safety
I
without
love
carrying
that.
that old stuff into place. And so, like, standing in front of the mirror and just saying to yourself, I forgive you, because there are so many moments where you carry that guilt, that burden of, I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't strong enough to fix it. And therefore, I had to move on, but I feel bad about it. You have to
Mhm.
forgive yourself for that. So, forgive yourself, make a list of your fears, understand where these fears are coming from, and then find constructive ways to release. Either
Mhm.
whether that's like writing notes and then burning them, but find different ways to be able to confront it, understand what it is, feel it, and let it go. Mindfulness is a great way of doing that too. Like, every time I introduce my clients to mindfulness, and it just so happens, like, a lot of times I find I have a lot of clients who've never heard of or never practiced mindfulness, but in 6 instances that I can mention, that I can clearly remember like they were yesterday, I had like 6 separate clients who, when I introduced them to mindfulness and they were going through this letting go phase of their life, cried for days and called me or messaged me and said, Julie, you broke me. What did you do to me? I said, I didn't do anything to you. This was what was in you and it had to come out. And now it's being released. And so
Mhm.
when you take those quiet moments in mindfulness and you're listening to the talk, right? What is the self-talk that you're telling yourself? How the awareness of what is around you and what is happening within you and how it's going to release itself in a constructive way is through crying. And sometimes crying for days, if it's what you need to do, just do it. But
That's what
those would be
happened.
my recommendations.
Yes, I love that. I think in whatever way it resonates with you and your body and your soul, right? And we know sometimes it's crying, sometimes it's screaming, sometimes it's writing. Any form of physical activity, walking, painting, anything that gets your body moving, there is a physiological process that our bodies have to go through to get those things out. And it's
Oh,
so important to do that. It's so
yep.
important.
Oh yeah.
I quickly want to share with everybody, if you're interested in ordering Julie's book, which I highly encourage you to do, right here, guys, you can go to her website, which is hr@heart.co. So you can see that there. So we're almost out of time, and this is, we could talk for hours. And I say this to so many of my guests because I could literally sit here and talk for hours about
Yes.
this. So, Julie, you sit in Barbados,
Yes.
which I sit in Tampa, Florida, and everybody's like, oh, it's so tropical, but it's no Barbados. Let's be real, right? So I'm
It's
super
true. It's
jelly
not.
that you are in Barbados. So I'm going to share with everybody. So you were born in the UK to a
Yeah.
Jamaican father and a Barbadian mother. That makes you a Brit bajam.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
I love
It
that.
does.
What a diverse, like, history you must be able to share with people. That's phenomenal. I love
Hmm.
that. Um,
Hmm.
and you are a huge Marvel fan. So
I
share
am.
with us, what is your favorite Marvel movie? Do you have a favorite?
I have favorites, but
Okay. What is
my
your favorite?
my favorite movie right now, in the Marvel universe is, I keep going back to the last two Avengers movies. So I can't watch Infinity War and not watch Endgame.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I,
they're
I
so good.
and every time and they're really good to just watch while I'm working or listen to while I'm working. I
Yep.
like to have sound in the background, something familiar. A lot of times I'm just listening to jazz, but then sometimes later in the evening, and I just want to, as I'm winding down, I'll start with Infinity War and then I'll finish with Endgame.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, my background noise is either the Golden Girls or Downton Abbey. They're usually always playing in the background somewhere, because where I work at home, I'm by myself all day. I have the dogs and cats with me, but it's just that noise of
you need it.
People.
Some people need it.
Yeah,
I should say. I definitely need it. I have ADHD, and so for me, background noise is really important. So for the most part, to get hyper focused, I listen to a lot of jazz. So I always have jazz on YouTube every day, and then, like I said, in the evening as I'm winding down, I go straight to Disney Plus. I'm loving Disney Plus. Best thing we ever did. Oh my gosh.
Best thing ever. I know. We watch it and kids are always like, when can we see a new movie? I'm like, when they release one. So I know we only have a couple minutes left. I just want to thank you for being here. What a phenomenal conversation. Absolutely loved everything we talked about. I want to thank our sponsors, Daily Pay. Without them sponsoring the show, we wouldn't be able to do it each and every week. If anyone watching has not checked out Daily Pay, you can reach out to me. You can go to their website. It is an absolute game changer in allowing your employees to access their earned but unpaid wages at any time through an app. And there's no interest involved. It's a simple transfer fee, less than an ATM fee. So wonderful, wonderful product. And we're so grateful that they have partnered with us. And two other things. I encourage everyone to check out our YouTube channel. I post all of our sessions on our YouTube channel. And we kicked off Black History Month with a pre-recorded session with a gentleman, Ernest Krim, who is a history teacher, and he sits right outside of Chicago. And he and his wife were the victim of a hate crime a few years ago at a festival. And just a horrible experience. Thankfully, they were not physically hurt, but it was a hate crime nonetheless. And Ernest shared his story, and he wrote a book, How Black History Saved My Life. And we talked about experience. So it is live on YouTube today as well. And next week, joining me back at the table is the amazing Natasha Bowman, who has shared with everyone her challenge and her battle with mental health and mental health awareness. Natasha has bipolar disorder, and at a point in time attempted to take her life. And we're so glad she was not successful, and that she has a support system who has kept her here. But she is also a phenomenal HR professional and an attorney, and she joins us next week live at the table. So you won't want to miss any of those episodes. And Julie, this was amazing. I'm hoping you'll come back and join us anytime. And if you write another book, we certainly want to talk about that. I encourage all of you to check out Julie's website, check out what she does. And if you're looking for a coach, reach out to Julie. She's there. She's phenomenal. She offers such amazing support to her clients. I'm blessed and grateful to have you here and part of my community. So thank you so much. And I wish all of you a wonderful rest of your day. So thank you guys. We're going to sign off now.